We've all been told for decades that eating more leafy greens is the ultimate key to a healthy life. It's a message we hear from almost every news outlet and wellness guide. But in my clinical practice, I've discovered a startling truth that the busy healthcare system often overlooks. For many of you over 60, those very superfoods might be the silent culprit straining your kidneys.
Think of your kidneys as a sophisticated home filtration system that has served you faithfully for 6 decades. Even the best filters eventually slow down and can process the same heavy load they once did. I'm Dr. Eric Whitman, and I've seen far too many patients follow the standard rules only to find themselves facing the looming shadow of dialysis. This isn't just about lab results. It is a direct threat to your independence and your freedom to live life on your own terms. The danger builds quietly, mineral by mineral, until your autonomy is at stake.
Fortunately, you still have control. By identifying which vegetables are your true guardians and which are hidden enemies, you can protect your future. Comment, check, or not sure below. To truly understand why your diet matters so much at this stage of your life, we need to take a look under the hood. Most of us go through life never giving a second thought to our kidneys. We think of them as just 2 bean-shaped organs somewhere in our lower back that produce urine. But in reality, your kidneys are the most sophisticated high-tech water purification and chemical processing plant ever designed. As a doctor, I've spent years studying this system, and I can tell you that what happens inside those tiny filters is nothing short of a miracle. However, like any piece of advanced machinery that has been running 24/7 for 60, 70, or 80 years, the maintenance requirements change. Imagine for a moment the municipal water treatment plant that serves your city. Its job is to take in water from a river or a lake, water that is filled with silt, bacteria, and debris, and turn it into something crystal clear that is safe for you to drink. To do this, the plant uses a series of complex filters, chemical injectors, and pressure regulators. Your kidneys do the same thing for your blood. Every single drop of blood in your body passes through your kidneys about 40 times a day. That is roughly 200 quarts of fluid being processed every 24 hours. Their job is to sift through that fluid, deciding with microscopic precision what is treasure and what is trash. They keep the essential minerals, the proteins, and the water your body needs, and they flush out the toxins, the excess acids, and the metabolic waste. But here is where it gets complicated for us as we age. In this purification plant, the actual work is done by millions of tiny units called nephrons. Think of these nephrons as individual microscopic filters. When you are 20 years old, your plant is operating with a full staff. Every filter is pristine, the pipes are clear, and the system can handle almost any load you throw at it. If you eat a massive steak dinner followed by a salty snack and 3 glasses of wine, your kidneys might work a little harder for a few hours, but they recover instantly. They have massive reserve capacity. However, life happens. Over decades, through the natural process of aging, or perhaps because of high blood pressure or a touch of high blood sugar that went unnoticed for a few years, some of those microscopic filters begin to retire. They scar over and stop working. This is where the danger of chronic kidney disease, or CKD, lies. It is what I call the silent decline. In my clinic, I often see patients like a gentleman I'll call Mr. Robert Miller, a 68-year-old retired engineer. Robert felt great. He was active, he worked in his garden, and he had a healthy appetite. He came to see me because his primary care doctor noticed his numbers were a bit off. When I looked at Robert's labs, his kidney function, what we call the GFR, or glomerular filtration rate, was at 45%. In medical terms, he was in stage 3 chronic kidney disease. Robert was shocked. He said, "Dr. Whitman, how can that be? I don't feel sick. Nothing hurts. I'm not tired. If my kidneys were only working at 45%, shouldn't I be in pain?" I explained to him the great paradox of the kidneys. They are too good at their jobs for their own good. When your kidney function drops from 100% down to 80%, then 60%, the remaining healthy filters don't just sit there. They go into overtime. They work twice as hard to pick up the slack of the filters that have failed. This is a process we call hyperfiltration, because the remaining filters are working so hard they keep your blood clean and you feel perfectly fine. You have no idea that the plant is struggling because the output still looks normal. But this overtime comes at a cost. The extra pressure eventually burns out the remaining filters faster. By the time you actually start feeling symptoms, like swelling in your ankles, metallic taste in your mouth, or extreme fatigue, you might already be down to 15% or 20% function. At that point, the plant is on the verge of a total blackout, and that is when the conversation about dialysis becomes an emergency. This is why we must talk about the problematic waste. When your purification plant is running at 100%, it can handle almost anything. But when it's running at 40% or 50%, the chemicals that used to be harmless or even healthy suddenly become toxic waste that the system can't clear. There are two main culprits I want you to understand deeply: potassium and oxalates. Let's start with potassium. In every health magazine, you're told to get more potassium to lower your blood pressure. And for a person with perfect kidneys, that's great advice. But for my patients with reduced kidney function, potassium is the most dangerous element on their plate. Why? Potassium is the electrical spark of your body. It is the mineral that tells your muscles to contract, and most importantly, it tells your heart when to beat. Your kidneys are responsible for keeping the level of potassium in your blood in a very narrow, very specific range. Think of it like the voltage in your house. If the voltage is too low, the lights flicker. If it's too high, you fry the electronics. When your kidney plant is struggling, it can no longer flush out the extra potassium you get from your diet. It starts to build up in your bloodstream, a condition we call hyperkalemia. The terrifying thing about high potassium is that it doesn't usually cause a warning pain. You might feel a little tingly in your fingers or a bit of muscle weakness, but often the very first symptom is a life-threatening heart arrhythmia. It's like a power surge hitting your heart's electrical system. Your heart can lose its rhythm, skip beats, or even stop suddenly. This is why when I see a patient whose kidneys are in the yellow zone, I have to be the one to tell them that the healthy spinach salad or that extra banana is no longer their friend. It's a hard message to deliver, but it's the message that saves their life. The second culprit is even more insidious: oxalates. You find these in many leafy greens and vegetables. For most people, oxalates are just a byproduct of digestion that gets filtered out and sent to the bladder. But for a kidney that is already under stress, oxalates are like pouring sand into a delicate watch mechanism. I want you to use the glass shards analogy to visualize this. When oxalates accumulate in a kidney that isn't filtering properly, they don't stay in liquid form. They begin to bind with calcium and form microscopic crystals. These aren't smooth stones. They are jagged, sharp, and crystalline. As your blood is forced through the tiny, delicate tubes of your kidneys, these microscopic shards of glass scrape against the walls of the filters. Imagine taking a handful of fine glass shards and rubbing them against a piece of silk. That silk represents the delicate tissue of your kidney filters. Over time, this constant scraping causes microscopic tearing, which leads to inflammation, which leads to scarring. And here is the kicker: scar tissue cannot filter blood. Once a part of your kidney turns into a scar, that part of the plant is closed forever. It doesn't grow back. This is how the healthy vegetables like spinach or Swiss chard, which are packed with oxalates, can actually accelerate the destruction of the very organ you are trying to protect. They turn a slow decline into a fast-moving crisis. Now, I know this sounds heavy. I know that hearing about glass shards and electrical surges in your heart can be frightening. But as I told Mr. Miller in my office that day, I am not telling you this to scare you. I am telling you this to empower you. The greatest fear I see in my patients over 60 isn't actually death. It's the loss of independence. It is the idea of being hooked up to a machine 3 days a week for 4 hours at a time. It is the idea of having to ask their children for a ride to the clinic because they no longer have the energy to drive. It's the loss of the ability to travel, to garden, or to simply live life on their own terms. Knowledge is the only thing that stands between you and that reality. When you understand the mechanism, when you understand that your filtration plant is simply asking for a lighter load, you realize that you are not a victim of aging. You are the manager of your own health. The system, the big hospitals, and the insurance companies often waits until you are in a crisis to give you a nutritionist or a specialized plan. They wait until the plant has already crashed. But you don't have to wait. By understanding how potassium and oxalates work, you are putting the fork of control back into your own hands. Every single meal becomes a conscious decision to protect those millions of tiny filters that have worked so hard for you for so long. You see, Robert Miller took this information and changed his strategy. He didn't stop eating vegetables. He just stopped eating the ones that were sanding down his filters. He stopped the power surges by managing his potassium. 6 months later, his kidney function hadn't just stopped falling, it had actually stabilized. He stayed out of the red zone. He kept his independence. That is what I want for you. In the next few minutes, we are going to look at exactly which vegetables are the heroes that will act as a cooling balm for your filtration plant, and which ones are the villains you need to limit or avoid to keep those glass shards out of your system. You have the power to change the trajectory of your health one bite at a time. Your kidneys are still working for you. Now it's time for you to start working for them. Now that we have identified the silent enemies that might be lurking in your crisper drawer, I want to pivot to the most exciting part of our conversation today. I call this the Guardian's Gallery. These are the vegetables that don't just get by the kidney as filtration system, they actually support it, soothe it, and protect it. As a physician, I often tell my patients that the grocery store is essentially a pharmacy, but without the side effects or the high co-pays. When we are over 60, our goal is no longer just eating healthy in a general sense. It is about eating strategically. We want foods that provide high nutritional value but require very little work from our kidneys. We are looking for the cleanest fuel possible for your filtration plant. In my practice, I have seen patients dramatically stabilize their kidney function, sometimes even seeing a slight improvement in their GFR numbers, simply by shifting their plates toward these 4 specific heroes. Let's look at them one by one, and I'll explain exactly why they are so vital for your long-term independence. I often start with cabbage, because it is perhaps the most underestimated vegetable in the American diet. Many of my patients, like a wonderful woman named Mrs. Dorothy Thompson, initially turned their noses up at it. Dorothy grew up in a household where cabbage was something you boiled until it was gray and mushy. She associated it with poverty food, but I sat her down and explained that from a nephrology standpoint, cabbage is essentially royalty. Why is cabbage the ultimate hero? First and foremost, it is exceptionally low in potassium. As we discussed earlier, potassium is the electrical mineral that your kidneys struggle to balance as you age. While a cup of cooked spinach can have over 800 milliliters of potassium, a cup of chopped raw cabbage has only about 150 milliliters. This is a massive difference. For your kidneys, filtering cabbage is like a professional athlete lifting a feather. It causes zero stress. But cabbage is more than just low potassium. It is what I call the inflammation shield. Chronic kidney disease is, at its core, a disease of inflammation. The delicate tissues of your nephrons are often on fire from oxidative stress. Cabbage is a member of the cruciferous family, which means it is packed with phytochemicals, specifically isothiocyanates and sulforaphane. Let's talk about sulforaphane for a moment. This isn't just a fancy science word, it's a powerful internal janitor. Sulforaphane helps turn on your body's natural antioxidant defenses. It goes into the kidney tissue and helps quench those microscopic fires of inflammation. I've seen patients who incorporated more cabbage into their diets see a gradual reduction in their markers of systemic inflammation. Furthermore, cabbage is a powerhouse of vitamin K and vitamin C, which are essential for blood clotting and tissue repair, respectively. But perhaps its most overlooked benefit is its high fiber content. Now you might wonder, Dr. Whitman, what does the gut have to do with my kidneys? The answer is everything. We call this the gut-kidney axis. When your gut is healthy and moving regularly because of fiber, it produces fewer uremic toxins. Those are the toxins that your kidneys normally have to filter out. By keeping your gut clean with cabbage fiber, you are effectively outsourcing some of the cleaning work, giving your kidneys a much-needed break. How to prepare it? Don't boil it as Dorothy's grandmother did. That destroys the sulforaphane. Instead, think of crunchy protection. Shred raw green or red cabbage into a fresh coleslaw. Use a dressing of heart-healthy olive oil and apple cider vinegar. Avoid the heavy mayo. You can also do a quick sauté with a little garlic and caraway seeds. You want it to keep its snap. That snap is where the medicine lives. If cabbage is the foundation of your kidney protective diet, red bell peppers are the high-tech shields. In my clinical experience, red bell peppers are the secret weapon for anyone trying to avoid dialysis while still enjoying flavorful food. The problem many of my patients face when they receive a kidney-friendly diet plan is that it feels white and beige. Lots of white rice, white bread, and bland chicken. They miss color. They miss the red on their plate. Usually that red comes from tomatoes, but as we've established, concentrated tomatoes are a potassium disaster for weak kidneys. Enter the red bell pepper. It is one of the most vibrant, nutrient-dense foods in the green zone for kidney patients. A medium-sized red bell pepper has less than 200 mg of potassium. Compare that to a medium tomato, and the difference is night and day. But the real magic is in the nutrient punch it carries. Red bell peppers are arguably the best source of vitamin C you can find, often containing more vitamin C by weight than oranges or lemons. For a person over 60, vitamin C is a cellular guard. It protects the lining of your blood vessels, including the microscopic vessels inside your kidneys. When these vessels stay flexible and healthy, your kidney function remains stable. Additionally, red peppers are loaded with vitamin A and lycopene. Lycopene is a potent antioxidant that specifically targets oxidative stress in the renal system. It acts like a protective coating on your cells, preventing free radicals from denting the machinery of your nephrons. But here is the pro tip I give to my patients who are struggling to give up their favorite Italian or Mexican dishes. Use red bell peppers as a tomato replacement. I call this the Whitman no-mato sauce. You roast 3 or 4 red bell peppers until the skins are charred, peel them, and blend them with some sautéed onions, garlic, and maybe a little bit of cooked carrot for sweetness. Add some Italian herbs, and you have a rich red savory sauce that looks and tastes remarkably like tomato sauce, but with a fraction of the potassium. One of my patients, a retired high school principal named Larry, was a pasta and red sauce guy his whole life. When his kidneys started failing, he was devastated by the idea of eating plain noodles. When I showed him how to make the red bell pepper sauce, he said it saved his sanity. More importantly, his potassium levels stayed in the safe range, and he was able to stay off the emergency list at the local hospital. Our third hero is the humble zucchini, or as some call it, the summer squash. If I had to describe zucchini in one phrase, it would be the internal rinse. As we age, our thirst mechanism often becomes less sensitive. Many seniors are walking around chronically dehydrated without even knowing it. For kidneys that are already struggling, dehydration is a catastrophe. It's like trying to run a water purification plant when the river is drying up. The toxins become more concentrated and the filters become clogged with mineral sludge. Zucchini is 95% water. When you eat it, you aren't just eating food. You are consuming structured water that is released slowly during digestion. This provides a steady, gentle stream of hydration directly to your renal system. It helps dilute the toxins in your blood, making it much easier for your nephrons to do their job without having to push so hard. From a mineral standpoint, zucchini is a dream. It is extremely low in potassium and almost non-existent in sodium. It also has a very low oxalate count, which, as we discussed, is the key to preventing those glass shard crystals from forming. But zucchini's real superpower for seniors is its versatility. It is a chameleon in the kitchen. Because its flavor is so mild, it takes on the taste of whatever you cook it with. This is crucial for maintaining a high quality of life. One of the biggest complaints I hear from my patients is, "Baxi, I'm bored with my food." Boredom leads to cheating, and cheating leads to the dialysis clinic. Zucchini solves this. I recommend my patients invest in a simple spiralizer. You can turn a zucchini into a mountain of zoodles, zucchini noodles. Sauté them for 2 minutes with a little olive oil and garlic, top them with that red bell pepper sauce we just talked about, and you have a hero meal that protects your kidneys while making you feel like you re at a high-end bistro. I had a patient named Mr. James who loved his Sunday night spaghetti. He was at stage 4 kidney disease, and his doctors told him he had to stop eating heavy pasta and sauce. He felt like his life was over. When we switched him to zoodles with garlic and olive oil, he told me he actually felt better after eating. He didn't have the heavy feeling that comes from grain-based pasta, and his kidney function stabilized for the first time in 3 years. That is the power of the internal rinse. Finally, we come to the king of refreshment, the cucumber. If zucchini is the internal rinse, the cucumber is the cellular hydration shower. For my patients over 60, especially those living in warmer climates or those who are on certain medications like diuretics, water pills, maintaining fluid balance is a constant tightrope walk. You need to stay hydrated, but you can't overload your system with sodium or potassium. Cucumber is the perfect solution. Cucumbers are virtually free of sodium and very low in potassium, but what makes them special is their cooling effect on the body and the kidneys. In traditional medicine, cucumbers have been used for centuries to clear heat, and in modern nephrology, we see this as a way to reduce oxidative stress and metabolic heat in the renal tissues. Like zucchini, cucumbers are mostly water, but they also contain small amounts of silica and other trace minerals that support the connective tissues of the kidneys. But perhaps the most important role of the cucumber in your independence plan is as a tool to increase your water intake. Many of my patients struggle to drink the 8 glasses of water a day that I recommend. They find plain water boring. This is where the cucumber becomes a hero. I tell them to make Whitman's kidney-safe infused water. Take a large pitcher of water, drop in several thin slices of fresh cucumber and a few sprigs of mint. Leave it in the fridge overnight. The result is a crisp, refreshing drink that makes you want to hydrate. Every sip is a mini shower for your kidney cells, helping to flush out metabolic waste products like urea and creatinine before they can build up to dangerous levels. Another clinical tip. For those who miss cold soups or gazpacho, which is usually tomato-based and high potassium, I recommend a green gazpacho. Blend peeled cucumbers with a little bit of green bell pepper, a touch of onion, garlic, olive oil, and white wine vinegar. It is a savory, refreshing, and completely kidney-safe way to enjoy a meal on a hot afternoon. One of my patients, a retired veteran named Arthur, used to drink 3 or 4 sodas a day because he hated plain water. His kidneys were paying a heavy price. We switched him to cucumber-infused water. Within 3 months, his systemic blood pressure dropped, and his kidney filtration rate improved because he was finally properly hydrated without the sugar and chemical load of the sodas. When you look at these 4 heroes, cabbage, red bell pepper, zucchini, and cucumber, you begin to see a pattern. We aren't just picking random vegetables. We are building a kidney fortress. Cabbage provides the anti-inflammatory foundation. Red bell pepper provides the antioxidant shield and flavor. Zucchini provides the gentle fiber and watery volume to keep things moving. Cucumber provides deep cellular hydration to flush the system. In my years of practice, I have seen that the patients who thrive, those who stay active, continue to drive their own cars, and avoid the dialysis center, are the ones who embrace these heroes. They don't see it as a diet of restriction. They see it as a strategy for freedom. By choosing these 4 vegetables, you are making a profound statement to your body. You are saying, I value my independence, I value my health, and I am willing to make small, intelligent changes to protect the organs that have kept me alive for all these years. This is what it means to put the fork of control back in your hands. You don't have to wait for a miracle cure or a new medication. The tools for your protection are already there, waiting for you in the produce aisle. In the next section, we are going to look at the villains. We need to avoid to make sure we aren't undoing all this good work. But for now, I want you to feel empowered. You have the map, you have the heroes. Your kidneys have a bright future ahead of them. As we move into this next section, I want to offer a very important disclaimer. As a doctor, I spent years learning that vegetables are the foundation of health. The foods we are about to discuss, spinach, Swiss chard, beets, and tomatoes, are not poison in the traditional sense. In fact, for a 20-year-old with perfect kidney function, these are nutritional powerhouses. They are packed with vitamins and minerals that help the body thrive. However, we are not talking about a 20-year-old. We are talking about you, someone who has navigated 6 or 7 decades of life and whose filtration plant might be operating at a reduced capacity. When your kidneys are weakened, they lose the ability to process high concentrations of certain compounds. In this state, a superfood can quickly transform into a hidden villain. I have seen countless well-meaning patients arrive at my clinic with declining kidney numbers, utterly confused because they had been eating clean and green. The problem wasn't their intention, it was the load they were putting on their filters. Let us unmask these 4 villains so you can stop the silent damage before it's too late. If there is one vegetable that breaks my heart to blacklist, it is spinach. We've been conditioned since the days of Popeye to believe that spinach is the ultimate source of strength. And it is, unless your kidneys are in the yellow or red zone. Spinach is what I call a double threat villain because it attacks your kidneys from 2 sides simultaneously. It is a potassium bomb and an oxalate factory. Let's look at the numbers, because they are staggering. A single cup of cooked spinach can contain anywhere from 800 milligrams to over 500 milligrams of potassium. To put that in perspective, many of my patients are on a strict limit of 2,000 milligrams for the entire day. One side dish of spinach can blow through 75% of your daily budget in 5 minutes. When that much potassium enters a weakened system, your kidneys can't flush it out fast enough. It lingers in your blood, and as we discussed, this puts your heart at immediate risk of rhythm issues. But the second threat is even more physically destructive. Oxalates. Spinach is one of the highest sources of oxalates in the human diet. In my clinic, I once treated a man named Bill, a 72-year-old retired architect who took great pride in his health. Bill started every morning with a green smoothie packed with 2 large handfuls of raw spinach. He thought he was building a fortress of health. But within 6 months, his creatinine levels spiked, and he began experiencing intense, dull aches in his lower back. When we looked at his kidneys, they were under siege. The oxalates from his daily smoothies were forming those microscopic glass shard crystals we talked about, causing permanent scarring to his delicate filters. The tragedy is that Bill was trying his best. He just didn't realize that for his 65% functioning kidneys, spinach was a direct assault. The swap. You don't have to give up salads. Switch to romaine lettuce or arugula. They provide that crisp, green satisfaction, but with a fraction of the potassium and oxalate load. They are much gentler on your filtration plant. The second villain is often found right next to the spinach in the grocery store, Swiss chard. It's a beautiful vegetable, often with vibrant red or yellow stems, and it's frequently marketed as a gourmet healthy green. Because it's trendy, many of my patients assume it's a safer or more advanced choice than basic greens. Unfortunately, Swiss chard is the twin threat to spinach. It is remarkably high in potassium, often delivering 500 milligrams to 900 milligrams per cooked cup, and it is equally loaded with oxalates. The danger here is the health halo effect. Because it's an expensive, leafy green often found in high-end health food stores, patients think they are doing something extra for their health. In reality, Swiss chard puts your kidneys under the same high-pressure stress as spinach. It contributes to that sanding down of your nephrons, accelerating the transition from stage 2 kidney disease to stage 3 or 4. I tell my patients to think of Swiss chard like a high-voltage current. Your old house, your kidneys, just isn't wired to handle that much power anymore. The swap. Go back to our hero, cabbage. If you want that warm, sautéed green experience, sauté some shredded cabbage with garlic, olive oil, and a touch of smoky paprika. You get the texture, you get the flavor, but you keep your kidneys in the safe zone. Beets are currently having a moment in the US. You see them in powders, juices, and supplements, usually marketed for blood pressure and blood purification. For a senior, this sounds like exactly what the doctor ordered. And while it's true that beets can help relax blood vessels, for your kidneys, they are a major concentration risk. Beets are naturally high in both potassium and oxalates. But the real villainy emerges when we talk about beet juice. Many people over 60 are turning to beet juice to avoid taking blood pressure medication. The problem is that to make one glass of juice, you have to concentrate the minerals of several large beets. Imagine your kidney as a small doorway. Eating a few slices of a roasted beet is like one person walking through that door. Drinking a glass of beet juice is like a crowd of 50 people trying to shove through that same door all at once. The bottleneck creates pressure, and that pressure causes damage. I have seen patients manage to lower their blood pressure with beet juice, only to find they have accidentally fried their kidney filters in the process. It's a trade-off that is simply not worth your independence. The swap. If you miss the earthiness and sweetness of beets, try roasted carrots. When roasted with a little bit of thyme, carrots provide a similar satisfying sweetness, but with a much more manageable mineral profile. Or, use our hero, the red bell pepper, for that vibrant color and antioxidant boost without the crowd at the kidney's door. This is the one that most of my American patients find hardest to accept. We love our tomatoes. They are in our pasta sauces, our pizza toppings, our ketchups, and our soups. The stealth attack of the tomato isn't usually the fresh tomato on your sandwich. That's often okay in moderation. The villain is concentration. To make a small jar of pasta sauce or a bottle of ketchup, you have to boil down and concentrate dozens of tomatoes. Tomatoes are naturally rich in potassium. When you remove the water and concentrate them into a paste or sauce, you are creating a potassium grenade. 1 cup of tomato sauce can have over 900 milligallons of potassium. Think about a typical Sunday dinner, a big bowl of pasta with marinara sauce. Between the sauce and the pasta, you could easily hit your entire day's potassium limit in one sitting. And because it's a liquid sauce, the potassium hits your bloodstream fast. It's not a slow release, it's an attack on your system. I remember a patient named Martha, 68, who was a stage 3 kidney patient. She was very careful with salt and sugar, but her potassium levels were consistently high. When we did a deep dive into her kitchen, we found she was using tomato paste in almost every stew and soup she made to add flavor. She thought it was a healthy vegetable choice. Once we removed the concentrated tomato, her potassium levels stabilized within 2 weeks. The swap. This is where you use the Whitman tomato sauce we discussed earlier. By using roasted red bell peppers as your base, you get that rich, savory red sauce experience without the stealth attack on your kidneys. The common thread among these 4 villains is that they are all traditionally healthy. This is why the busy healthcare system often fails to warn you. Your doctor might say, eat more vegetables, and you go home and buy spinach and beets because that's what we've been taught is best. But you are now part of an inner circle of patients who understand that context is everything. At 60 plus, your health strategy must be more precise. You are no longer just eating for health. You are eating for filtration. By limiting or avoiding these 4 villains, you aren't missing out. You are strategically protecting the very organs that allow you to stay out of the hospital and in your own home. You are choosing the hero vegetables that support your system rather than the villain vegetables that overtax it. This isn't a diet of deprivation, it's a diet of preservation. In the final section, I'm going to show you a simple kitchen trick that can help you disarm even some of these villains, giving you even more control over your plate. But for now, take a deep breath. You are already miles ahead of where you were 10 minutes ago. Now that we have identified the heroes to welcome onto your plate and the villains to avoid, I want to share something truly special with you. As a doctor, I know that one of the hardest parts of managing kidney health, especially for my patients who have spent decades enjoying their favorite family recipes, is the feeling that your world is shrinking. You start to feel like every trip to the grocery store is a walk through a minefield. In my clinical experience, the most successful patients are not the ones who live on a diet of air and ice. They are the ones who learn to be smarter than the minerals. I want to give you back a sense of control over your kitchen. I call this the empowerment strategy, and it revolves around a simple yet life-changing culinary technique called leaching. Potassium is a stubborn mineral, but it has one major weakness. It is water-soluble. This means that with the right approach, we can actually draw out a significant portion of the potassium from certain vegetables before they ever reach your mouth. By using the soak and double boil method, you can reduce the potassium content of high-risk vegetables by as much as 50%. This is the difference between a food being a threat and it being a treat you can enjoy in moderation. Let's walk through the 4 essential steps of this kidney-saving hack. The first step is all about geometry. Think of the potassium inside a vegetable like people trapped inside a building. If there is only one tiny exit, it takes forever for them to get out. If you open up all the walls, they can exit much faster. When you prepare a vegetable like a potato, a carrot, or a beet, you must first peel it. The skin acts as a waterproof barrier that keeps the minerals locked inside. Once peeled, you need to cut the vegetable into small, thin slices or cubes. I tell my patients, the smaller the piece, the safer the meal. Why? Because cutting increases the surface area that comes into contact with the water. You are essentially creating thousands of exit ramps for the potassium to escape. I once had a patient named George, a 70-year-old retired veteran, who absolutely loved his Sunday mashed potatoes. His potassium levels were creeping into the danger zone, and he was terrified he'd have to give them up forever. I taught him to stop boiling whole potatoes and instead to dice them into half-inch cubes. That simple change in geometry was the first step in saving his favorite tradition. Once your vegetables are sliced thin, you need to give them a detox bath. Place the pieces in a large bowl and cover them with plenty of warm water. The ratio should be about 10 parts water to 1 part vegetable. You need to let them soak for at least 2 to 4 hours. I know what you're thinking. Dr. Whitman, I don't have 4 hours to stand in the kitchen. And you don't have to. I tell my patients to make this part of their routine. If you're planning dinner, put your vegetables in to soak right after lunch while you watch the news or read a book. During these hours, a process called osmosis takes place. Because there is a high concentration of potassium inside the vegetable and zero potassium in the surrounding water, the potassium naturally migrates out into the bowl. Using warm water, not boiling, just warm, helps soften the cellular structure of the vegetable, making it even easier for the potassium to leak out. If you really want to be an A+ student, change the water halfway through the soak. This keeps the exit ramp clear and encourages even more potassium to leave. This is the most critical step, and it is where many people make a dangerous mistake. After the soak is finished, you must discard the water. I've had well-meaning patients like a sweet woman named Martha, who thought she was being thrifty by using the soaking water to make a vegetable stock or soup. I had to sit her down and explain, Martha, that water is now a concentrated soup of potassium and oxalates. By using it, you are pouring the poison right back into your body. Think of that soaking water as liquid waste. It has done its job of pulling the toxins out of your food. Now it belongs down the drain. Rinse the vegetables one last time under the faucet to make sure no mineral residue is clinging to the surface. By the time you finish this step, your vegetables are already significantly lighter and much safer for your kidney's filtration plant. The final step is the double boil. Put your soaked and rinsed vegetables into a pot of fresh, unsalted water. Bring it to a boil for a few minutes, then, here is the secret, drain that water again. Fill the pot with a fresh batch of water and finish cooking the vegetables until they are tender. This second boil acts as a final rinse cycle for any remaining potassium that was loosened during the soaking process but hadn't quite escaped yet. Yes, it takes a few extra minutes. Yes, it's a bit more work than just throwing a pot on the stove. But consider the alternative. For George, the veteran I mentioned earlier, this soak and double boil method allowed him to enjoy a small portion of mashed potatoes every Sunday without his potassium levels spiking. It allowed him to maintain his quality of life and his sense of normalcy. As your doctor, my message to you is this: you do not have to live in a state of deprivation. When you receive a diagnosis of kidney disease or see your GFR numbers start to slip, the natural reaction is to feel like your life is being taken away from you. You start to fear your own kitchen. But through the strategy of leaching, you are reclaiming your power. You are learning to navigate the world with a kidney-smart lens. You are realizing that while you might need to avoid villains like raw spinach, which is too high in oxalates and potassium to ever be truly leached, safe, you can still enjoy a wide variety of other vegetables by simply changing how you prepare them. This is about sustainability. A diet that feels like a prison will never work in the long run. Eventually, everyone breaks out of a prison diet, and that usually ends in a medical crisis. My goal is to give you a strategy for freedom, a way to eat that protects your precious kidney filters while still allowing you to sit at the dinner table with your family and enjoy a meal. By adopting these small strategic habits, peeling, dicing, soaking, and double boiling, you are proving that you are in control. You are showing that you understand the Pakhan mechanics of your body and that you are willing to do the work to keep your independence. Every time you discard that wastewater filled with potassium, you are depositing into your independence fund. You are ensuring that you can keep driving, keep traveling, and keep living life on your own terms for many years to come. Remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be smarter than the minerals. You have the tools, you have the knowledge, and most importantly, you have the power to protect your future. The most dangerous thing we've discussed today isn't just one specific vegetable. It's the silent, invisible accumulation of minerals that slowly scar your kidney filters while you feel perfectly fine. If you have spent years reaching for those healthy greens without a second thought, please realize that you weren't being careless. You simply weren't given the full map by a healthcare system that often waits for a crisis before it starts explaining the fine print. But you haven't missed your window. By choosing your heroes and using the strategic preparation we covered, you are actively protecting the independence you have worked so hard to maintain. You are still the manager of your own health. If this shift in perspective makes sense to you, simply comment, "Starting today," or "Now I know" below. I invite you to follow this channel, not for entertainment, but to ensure you don't miss these early warnings that the busy world often overlooks. Our next conversation covers a risk that is even more common in our kitchens and can impact your system even faster than the vegetables we saw today. I tell you this because I have met far too many people in my clinic who only wish they had known sooner. Take care of those precious filters. I'm Dr. Eric Whitman,